thank you guys very much. I am recording this for tonight, so we can
for having us.
share the information, and you guys can listen to it again if you need to hear it again. So a little bit about why we do these talks. I want to make sure that, well, first of all, you know, the word doctor means teacher. So it actually comes from the Latin root word docere, which means to teach. And I believe that, you know, we should be teaching people a little bit about their life. And we only get so much time in here, right? So that we can spend time and kind of go over some stuff. But there's a lot of things that we do outside on an everyday basis or outside of this office that affect your health. So we got to make sure that you know what those things are, some of the things to avoid, some of the things to start incorporating into your life, so that we could actually get the best and most out of the care. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing. So that's what tonight's about, and a little bit more about that. So this is, let's go ahead and get started, right? So I'm afraid you've had a paradigm shift. Okay. So so a little bit. One of the running themes that we're going to be talking about tonight is, you know, if we look at just the healthcare in America right now, right? When do most people go in and see a doctor? On average, when they're sick, right? So they're sick, they got some sort of pain, ache, something like that, right? That's usually what happens and why they end up going to see a doctor. And if you look at just our society as a whole, how are we doing as far as healthcare goes? So like the statistics, I think we're like something like 42nd or something like that in industrialized nations. We're almost like one of the dead last, okay? We're not doing too good, okay? As far as just average health of the American citizen, right? Mm-hmm. So I think a big part of that is the reason, like, a lot of us are reactionary, right? Mm-hmm. So we wait till something's wrong or something's hurting to take care of ourselves. It usually doesn't lead to the best results, right? So what I'm trying to think about here, and if you think about that, right? So instead of, you think of the word healthcare, right? Is that true healthcare? No. So I call that sick care, right? You're waiting until you're sick to take care of yourself. So what we're trying to change about healthcare in this country, and hopefully I can play a small role in that, is explaining how we can actually start changing it to healthcare, how to take a more preventative approach to our health, right? Does that make sense, right?
Yeah.
Because we want to put on our 100-year cap, right? Right. So if we're gonna, this is what I try to teach people, right? So if we're gonna live, let's say 100 years, because we're like one of the first generations of people to know that we're pretty likely to live to about 100 years old, right? Mm-hmm. Pretty fun. So, but with that, right? So most people, when they think of 100 years old, what are they thinking about, right? What is that vision in our heads that most people have? Not me. But what do most people think of themselves at 100 years old?
Shrinking.
Yeah, shrinking. Are they healthy?
No.
Usually not, right? That's what most people are thinking. Are they on medications usually? That's what most people think of medications. How can they get around real easy?
They're probably in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Or a walker.
So this is what most people, and because that's, unfortunately, that is the model that we have, right? That's what most people think about when most people get to that. But there are plenty of examples that we could see of people getting to 90, 100 years old, 110, 150, 120 years old, and they're actually vibrant, right? Healthy, flexible, doing good, right? So if we think about ourselves, right, so we have to have that vision of ourselves, right? When we get to that 100 years, we gotta have that vision of, okay, we're healthy, we're vibrant. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's what I want each of you guys to have in your head of what we're going to look like when we're 100 years old. So we have the idea of hanging out with our grandkids and enjoying ourselves instead of that whole, sick in the hospital bed and that kind of stuff, right? Make sense? Mm-hmm. So there are things that we do on our everyday basis, like we talked about, that are going to be choices today that if we do them repetitively throughout our next whatever years we have until we're 100, that when we get to 100, what is our life going to look like, right? So we're going to talk about the factors of health a little bit later. They're actually on your paper there, the first stage there. Mm-hmm. Those are some of the things that we're going to be talking about when it comes to making sure that when we get to 100, that we're actually going to enjoy it, right? So who wants to live to 100 and enjoy it?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, cool. Who's with me? All right. So, I'm going to give away the spot. So what the heck? So we're in a chiropractic office, right?
Yeah.
So what is chiropractic as far as just the spine and the nervous system? How does that even play into this whole subject of lifelong health? How does that play into it?
the nerves feed into your organs and other things like that, and if you don't have a good signal to them, then they're not functioning properly, and
Boom.
all that fun stuff.
Very good, right? So that term, so exactly, the nervous system is what controls the body, right? So there's this term that everybody should understand, right? It's called, you guys know this one by now, right? Subluxation, okay? So since you were so good at subluxation, pretty much what it means is that if we have the bones that are normally supposed to line up right on top of each other, right? I'll use this guy as an example. If one of those bones shifts out of alignment between the one above it and below it, it'll put pressure on the nervous system, right? And so like you just said, the nervous system is what controls every function, right? Not just one or a couple of functions in our body, it's all of them, right? Every single function of the body, the nervous system has to control and coordinate, right? So we live our whole lives through it. So we got to make sure that it's functioning properly, right? So we have our brain that's up here, and it's function. We'll just say for our sake, it's functioning at 100%, right? For you, whatever that is, right? And let's say that we have the information that's trying to get from our brain and go into our body, right? And let's say that information is coming right through this nerve here, right? If this, and this is an oversimplification, but if this gets out of alignment like this, what will it do to that nerve?
Put pressure
on it, right? So there's a couple examples I'm going to give you, right? The first one is a water hose, right? So let's say that you're trying to water your garden, right? And somebody's, you're watering it, as long as there's sunlight on it, right? And you're watering it over time, it's and the soil is good, that garden should grow, right? As long as you keep watering, all that stuff's there. But if somebody came around, and you know where I'm going with this, they stomp on that water hose, what's going to happen to that garden over time?
Die.
It's going to die, right? So that's likened to our cells, right? So and this is how this works, this is how the nervous system works, right? Every single second, millions or trillions of cells are dying in your body, okay? And they're being replaced by new ones, right? So the information that comes from our brain is what tells what cells to be reproduced. Does that make sense? Now, if that information can't get through, then what kind of cells are being replicated at that site?
Dead ones.
Not very good ones, right? So improperly functioned cells, right? So they're not going to be vibrating the way that they're supposed to. They're not getting all the information to them like they should, right? So, and then the other example I would give is, let's say that we had, what is that other example I wanted to give? I have the water hose. Oh yeah, the cell phone. So the same kind of thing, right? So if you're talking on the cell phone to somebody and you're trying to give directions on how to, let's say, build a house, right? Let's say the cells are those houses, right? If you're trying to give that information and then you hit some static, you get every other word of those directions. Guess what? It's not going to function, right? You're going to have
Don't turn right.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's just not going to function the way it's supposed to. We're going to have an improper house or improper directions on where to go, right? So that's really important. And the critical concept that we talk about here is the fact that who does the healing in all of this, right? Is it me? Let's say you come in for an adjustment and I adjust you and we put the bones back together. Who then does the healing? Is it me or is it you?
Us.
You guys, right? So all I do is I do assist, right? So I assist in the healing process, but I never say I heal you, right? Some people call themselves healers for other people. I don't believe in that, right? Because I don't believe that we can heal somebody else. I think that we could assist in that healing process and then their body can do the healing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's really all this is, right? There's this thing called innate intelligence, okay? Innate intelligence, very simple. We can call it the genetic code in your body. You can call it God. You can call it whatever you want, right? But inside of your body, there is this power that actually heals, okay? So if you, and I'll give you some examples of this, right? Let's say you cut your arm, okay? Cut your arm. You put a Band-Aid on it, right? Is the Band-Aid healing you?
No.
No, of course not, right? The Band-Aid is doing what?
Protecting you from getting
infected so that your body can
heal it.
Right? It's aiding in the healing process, right? So then the body will actually do that. Now you could cut, have you ever had a steak before?
Yes.
You cut that, is it healing?
No.
No, it's because it's not alive, right? It doesn't have that innate intelligence inside of it anymore, it's not there. So it has to be a living organism that has that innate intelligence, right? That's when it will actually do the healing and the replicating. Now we know that healing and that replicating actually comes from the brain, right? So the nervous system was what actually carries that innate intelligence through it into all the parts of the body, right? So that's the philosophy behind chiropractic, and we have science to back that up. Okay, so this is what we do here. I can't cure you, only you can cure you, right? That's what this is about. So understand that you have the potential. If you walk away from this class with anything else, just understand how powerful your bodies are in healing themselves, if given the opportunity. Okay?
Miracle.
So yeah, miracles can happen, and we actually have a sign that says "Accept miracles," right? So it's on there, right? So that's really it. Now, there is a secondary condition that we talk about in here, and it's called. Do you guys remember this?
Yes.
Degeneration. Okay, secondary pattern is what's called degeneration. What ends up happening is this is where we're talking about spinal hygiene itself, right? So if the bone actually misaligns, it puts pressure on the discs as well as the nerves, right? So, and if we're going to talk about the discs for a second, off the nerves, right? So the discs, if they have pressure on them, and I give the example of a car tire being misaligned. If the car tire misaligns and you just keep driving and driving and driving on the tire, what happens to it?
Wears
out, right? It wears down and it gets spoiled, right? And your car's gonna pop eventually, right? That would be good. Your wheels start shaking, right? All kinds of interesting things happen to your car, and even the engine will start to get messed up, right? Because that misalignment affects the whole car, right? So the same thing with this. If you put the car tire back into alignment, guess what? It's gonna work the way it's supposed to, right? It's gonna last for a long time. The same with this. If this is out of alignment, it's putting pressure up to 200 times, right? 200 times more pressure on that disc space. What ends up happening is over time, that disc will start to wear down, right? So, and as it wears down, it just shows the different patterns of this. Now, here's the interesting, and when it gets to a certain point, it's called fusion, right? And fusion means that you can't really move it at that point. But just because somebody has fusion, let's say somebody does have fusion in their spine, do you think they have other areas above it and below that area that need to be taken care of?
Yes.
Right, of course, they do. So just because somebody has fusion doesn't mean we can't help them as a whole, okay? We just don't adjust those areas because it won't move, right? But here's one of the things I want to talk about is, doesn't that look painful, right? This right here looks very painful. Now here's the interesting thing. There are people that are walking around with that, or stage 3 or stage 4 degeneration in their spine that have no idea what's going on, okay? Pain-free. Aren't they blessed?
Not really.
Interesting question, right? Not necessarily, right? Because that person that has that effect, that amount of degeneration, is their nervous system working as well as it should or as it could, right? So subluxation, we don't always know that it's there. Does this make sense? Mm-hmm. So subluxation, I can give you some examples like, let's say heart disease, cancer. I mean, there's lots of different subjects, right? So if you look at cancer, for example, most people find out they have cancer when? That first time that a cancer cell pops up?
Yeah.
No, how long are they usually living with it?
One time.
Yeah.
15, 20 years before they figure it out. Did you know, here's another interesting thing. Did you know that your, let's say your liver can actually function off of something like 10 or up to, you won't have one symptom of liver function, of liver dysfunction, up to like 10 or 20% functioning.
Wow.
Right? So it'll just keep on withering away. Same with the kidneys. So right, these things, their body is resilient, right? And it won't always show and present symptoms to you until maybe it's on its last straw, okay? Similarly with the spine can actually misalign and degenerate over time to the point where now it's affected, right? So we don't want to wait. Does this make sense? We don't want to be the person that waits and wonders what happened, right? We want to be the person that takes action, right? So that's and the reason that they're walking around without actually knowing that it's going on is because this is a cross section of that nerve fiber, right? What you'll see is that there's different parts and different functions of the nerves. There's what's called motor function, there's autonomic function, and then there's sensory, okay? Now sensory is what's controlling like the pain, right? The pain levels. Now notice, it is the smallest portion of the nerve fiber itself, right? So if you look at this thing, right, motor function, huge, right? These B-type fibers, which are actually, when they get pressed upon, you're gonna get symptoms like weakness, spasms, fatigue, tightness. These are some of the general things that a lot more people experience on their day-to-day basis, right? So they're the things that, wow, man, I got that tightness in my shoulder, or you know, you've heard these symptoms, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I got that, oh, like that little thing right there. That's this stuff, right? That's because most of the time when the nerve impingement happens right here, those are the symptoms that you're going to be produced. Okay. Over here we have autonomic function. What does that mean? This is what's controlling your automatic functions of your body. Things like your respiratory system, your digestive system, your heart rate, things like that we don't necessarily have voluntary control over. Although we do have control over these things to some extent, right? Probably more than we thought before. But there's, let's just say, things that we could put on autopilot, right? Things that we could just kind of like forget about if we don't want to try to control them, right? Because we can control some of it. We can control our heart rate. We can work with our breathing patterns and stuff like this, right? But if you're looking at autonomic function, so if you have pressure on that area, what's going to end up happening is you can get problems with those things, right? So digestive function, right? So things like constipations or diarrheas, allergy symptoms, and breathing issues, asthma, these kinds of problems that we see and we take care of on a regular basis in our office, right? Now, again, do we take care of asthma? No. Do we actively treat asthma? Yeah. Right. So this is a main point that I want you guys to understand, is that when we move these bones into alignment, all we're doing is allowing your body to function better, right? So when I say I take care of allergies, I don't actually treat allergies. I just remove the interference to the nervous system that's causing the allergies in the first place. Make sense? Mm-hmm. And then I give you other things like diet and exercise and all these things that we're going to talk about that actually affect it. Okay? So that's what how we work with that. The last one is, of course, we talked about the sensory nerve patterns. Notice it's the smallest one, so it's going to be one of the last things to show up, and usually one of the first things to go away when we're taking care of people, right? So when that pain goes away for a lot of people, that's when a lot of people stop taking care of themselves, right? And this is where we get into the problem, because a lot of people they're going to wait for the next event, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to wait for the next problem to show up, and then guess what happens? That problem or that degenerative process can actually be further along than it was when they first had that problem, right? So I've had people come in, they've had like a neck problem 15 years ago, right? And I just had that one issue, and now it's so bad, right? Because they forgot about it, right? They never kept taking care of themselves. So what I'm going to show you guys is how to actually take care of yourself, so things like that don't end up happening in the future. So now we know what subluxation is, okay? How do they even happen, right? That would make sense. Like, we know it's an important thing, but how does it actually happen in our lives? Because I always get the question is, doc, how did I get that problem? It's a pretty smart question. And I say, that's a good question. Let's think about it. So here's the answer, and I do know the answer. It stresses. It stresses, okay? So there's 3 different types of stresses that we can encounter on an everyday basis, right? They happen to be chemical stress, physical stress, and emotional stress, right? So chemical, physical, and emotional. And let's talk about some of these things, right? And your body doesn't perceive any of these stresses differently than the other ones. To your body, stress is stress. Whether it's physical, chemical, or emotional, it's stress. It perceives it the same way, and it will produce similar results in your body, right? So let's start with physical stress, right? So, and we made other words for them to kind of make it easy. The 3 T's, right? We call them the 3 T's: toxins, traumas, and thoughts. Okay, these are the 3 T's of subluxation, to make it simple, right? So the first one, chemical stress, not in no particular order. Okay, no particular order, because they all play into each other. Some people have more chemical stress in their life. Some people have more physical stress in their life. Some people have more emotional stress, right? It depends upon the person. So I can't just say, oh, one person has, this is the mean one. No, it depends upon the person, right? So let's start with chemical stress. So I have a checklist, and it might be in your guys' thing here, and it's called Detoxify Your Life. Detoxify Your Life checklist. So what I want you to do is there's things in our lives, in our everyday basis, toxins that we're exposed to that literally cause these things to, is it in there? That's right there.
Detoxify Your Life, yeah.
You got it?
I think mine's double.
Okay. We'll make sure you get that before you go. So you don't need it right now.
You wanna take one of these?
Yeah, you can look through that one. But if you look at this, right, so things that are in our everyday life that are actually causing these problems to happen, right? So things like, I was looking at the other day of the water quality, right? So people that drink tap water, right? This is a relatively simple thing that most people is not even on their radar, right? Tap water. 260 different contaminants have been found in tap water in California, right? That's a lot. Things like lead, things like other people's prescription medications, things like molds, things. I mean, like 260. I'm not going to list them all, but you look at this. What ends up happening is those things. That's just one example. Okay, things that we put on our skin every single day, right? Ladies, usually more, right? Because you're looking at like makeup products and things like that. What ends up happening is we put that stuff on our skin. And where does stuff on your skin end up going? Into your body. It absorbs directly into your bloodstream, right? So anything you put on your skin goes into your bloodstream. So if you're looking at sunscreen products, right? Whatever you're looking at, everything you put on your body actually will go into your body, and it's just like you're eating it, right? So anything that goes on your skin, the rule of thumb is if you won't eat it, don't put it on your skin, right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. If you want to eat it, don't put it on your skin. So that's real simple. Things like even like what your bed is made out of, right? So you want to make sure that your bed is not made of toxic ingredients and things like that, right? Because there's a lot of them inside that they're made with. And so like again, look through that checklist. And if you're watching this online, we'll have that in one of the links. So if you're looking here, like again, all of these things are going to be inside the body and actually can affect it, right? The way it works, the toxin gets in, right? It's exposed to the body. Your brain perceives the toxin. It produces hormones, which then act on the muscles, okay? There's a bunch of muscles attached to these bones, right? And if they're pulled the wrong way, guess what? That's when you start to get the pressure on the nerves, right? Does that make sense? It can be a minor amount of pressure, right? What they've done studies on this, the pressure, the weight of a quarter on top of this nerve here can actually reduce the function of that nerve 60 to 80%, something like that. It's significant, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what we're looking at with this. Now, that chemical stress, right? Let's say that we have that chemical stress and it moves this bone out of alignment, right? That's now a physical stress. Now, subluxation itself is a physical stress. Would you agree?
Yes.
Now, and that can create emotional stress. Have you ever been in pain and felt emotional stress because of it? This is how the cycle happens, right? So let's talk about some of the other things that cause physical stresses themselves, right? So it used to be most people went into a chiropractic office because they had an accident of some sort, right? That was very common, right? Car accidents, some tripped and fell, fall off a ladder. These are the kinds of things that, 50, 60 years ago, maybe they were coming in more for those kinds of things, right? Now, nowadays, we have this thing called a sedentary lifestyle. You guys heard of this?
Yes.
So, and just like you were talking to me earlier, 6 to 8 hours or something like that of sleep, of sitting a day that most people do, right? It's a significant amount, right? What, I'll say it again, sitting to your spine is like sugar to your teeth. You eat the sugar, what happens to your teeth over time? Rots. It rots. Same thing can happen to our spines, right? So if we're sitting down 6, 8 hours a day, guess what? That spine starts to degenerate over time. So that's why we have solutions, right? You guys are more and more popular nowadays, right? We have, what are these, standing workstations, right? You stand up, you work on it. They get intricate now. You could have little things on, like, have you seen the treadmill workstation?
Yeah.
Right? So you're walking while you're actually on working, right? We have these things. We don't have the treadmills, but this right here, it's a little stepping roller, right? Not roller, but it's like a little wheel.
Yeah.
Pedals, right? So you're pedaling and you can increase or decrease the intensity while you're at work, right? Things like that, just to keep your body moving, keep the blood flowing, keep the lymph flowing, keep your muscles strong, right? I also, if you guys see those out there, we have these little balance cushions, right? So you see them right here. I recommend, especially before. That's why you don't have, and usually you don't want to use that for. I'll explain the balance cushion. You don't want to use them for more than like 20, 30 minutes at a time because it's an active workout. It actually is a workout, so I recommend switching. But the way that this thing works, I'm going to grab one. When you go to sit on it, set it down, and what ends up happening is you're actually going to be actively engaging your core muscles, right? So you actively engage your core, so that way you're actually strengthening up. And before your adjustment, it's good to actually kind of get on there and move around a little bit, right? When you move around, it actually loosens up the muscles, especially if you've been sitting down for a long time, right? We're loosening up the muscles, we're actually able to, right, when you come in and get your adjustment, it happens a lot faster and easier, right? We all like that. Does that make sense? So you get these guys on Amazon. So Amazon, you can buy them for, I think they're like $10. Okay, simple. If you don't want to get that one, there's like these big ball chairs too. You could use. Those are pretty cool. There's different options, right? So, and if you don't get any of these things, make sure you're standing up at least every 20, 30 minutes. Okay, so you get up and you move. So I'm going to give you some solutions. Now I want to talk a little bit about, like, let's say that when you go to sit down, how should you be sitting down? Because most people were never truly taught. They say, you know, sit up, right? That's about the extent of the information I got from people telling me how to sit down. Sit up straight.
Right.
That's all I heard. That's a good start. It's not complete. So I want to explain to you a little bit how you actually should be sitting down when you go to sit down. Because you guys sit down. Yeah. All right. Okay. Good. Okay. It wasn't just me. All right. So when we go to sit down, the goal here is actually to what's called a pelvic rock, right? So you're going to rock your pelvis forward. What that does is kind of extends your butt up. So there's two parts of your butt, right? You could do, like, we call it the top part right there, and then there's the bottom part. We want to end up on the bottom part. Does this make sense? Mm-hmm. So when we go to sit down, most people, they kind of, I'm going to exaggerate this to prove the point, but you kind of like rock forward, right? You see this? Mm-hmm. You rock forward, right, and then you end up something like this. Mm-hmm. That's how most people sit down, okay? Mm-hmm. What that does is it automatically puts you into this arch. If I try to take a deep breath, I want you to try this, right? So kind of hunch forward before, and then try to take a deep breath in. Is it not very easy to do, right? So that's slowing down your respiratory system. It's not allowing enough oxygen into your body, and then that's obviously not a very good thing for your health, right? Simple, just right there, right? We can go into all the digestive functions, all the other stuff, but just that, okay? Now, this is how we should be sitting down. We take our, I'm going to exaggerate this again to prove a point, or to demonstrate. You kick your butt up like this, then you go to sit down. You should be landing on what's called their sit bones, okay? Ischial tuberosities is the technical term. But when you end up landing on that area, and then when you sit up, then you go try to take a deep breath there. It's usually a lot easier. Would you agree?
Yes.
That's how I want you sitting down. Okay, does it make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's one little example. Here's the other one, guys. So now, and I didn't mention it before, but I'll mention it with this. Doing that will also just like this kind of doing the improper sitting actually destroys your lumbar curve. You're supposed to have this curve that goes this way, okay? And if you do this, you're straightening it out. And here's the key. Any position that your spine is in for more than 20 minutes, literally your spine will start to take that shape. Ooh. Okay? We said 68 hours a day before in the wrong position, right?
Yeah.
So 20 minutes in the wrong position, your spine starts to take the shape. Okay? I think it's called Wolf's Law or something like that. But anyways, that's how we want to actually make sure we sit down the right way when we're going to sit down. And then stand up every 20 minutes. If you stand up every 20 minutes, it won't take that shape. Gotcha. Here's the other part. This is my cell phone right now. This is how most people use a cell phone. Or this is how most people read. Or this is how most people do their computer work. Or this is how, whatever, right? Yeah. They eat dinner, right? Okay, so eat dinner maybe is a different, okay. So, but if we're sitting like so, there's, again, in your neck, there's supposed to be what's called a lordotic curve. Curve comes up and back, okay? If you have a straightened neck or a reverse curve in your neck, and you're sitting there like this, or even before that, this is how your spine will end up looking, right? So how do we fix that? Right? So cell phones, you look like this. You look like you're taking a selfie everywhere, right? A lot of people do that, which is fine, right? What else? When we're reading, there's like book stands that you can get, right? When we're on a computer, make sure we're having proper ergonomics. Make sure that the computer screen is eye height, right? So these
When
are,
you're doing this.
yeah, little things that we can do on an everyday basis that, talking about the 100-year lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
Those little tiny 2 millimeter shifts that we can make in our every single day, it's going to make a huge, like big difference down the line, right?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So that's physical stress. The last one's lack of exercise, right? So just by not moving so much, what ends up happening is we have this thing called the lymphatic system, right? And the lymphatic system is used to get toxins out of the body, bacteria and all these other things that are overpopulating and stuff like that, right? Get it out of the system, okay? Now, what ends up happening is it doesn't have its own circulation other than the motion of your body. So if you don't move, those toxins start to build up, right? So if toxins build up over time, more inflammation in the body, right? More inflammation tends to increase the risks of cancers and diabetes and cholesterol and all these other things that people are dying of, right? 9 out of 10 people die of heart disease or cancer, right? So these are the things that people are building up in their body, and they can be avoided, right? So we're not going to be those 9 out of 10. Nope. This is my job. Just make sure you're not, right? The last one here. Again, emotional stress. So things like fear, anxiety, depression. Now, don't get me wrong. Every emotion are just emotions, right? Even the happy ones. They're just emotions. I don't call them good emotions, and I don't call them bad emotions. Okay? We just have, because all these things are triggers, right? They're just ideas or feelings that you're getting depending upon your situation, right? So let's say that there was a appropriate thing, let's say an appropriate fear that you might have, right? Let's say that you have an appropriate fear of a tiger that's about to jump out and eat you, okay? You should be afraid then, right? That makes sense. Your body will say, okay, I need to get away from that trigger, right? That stimulus, I need to avoid it. That's called pain. I need to go this way, right? So your body will perceive that, do the appropriate responses, all the blood will start to rush to your muscles, you'll run the heck away from that thing, or you'll try to fight it, right? Or you'll freeze. What was me? I guess I'm screwed. No, but no. Okay, so does it make sense?
Yeah.
That's what our bodies are designed to do. They're designed to keep us alive,
Survival.
right?
Yeah.
Survival.
Yeah.
That's what our brain is wired for. Keep you alive. The problem nowadays is that fear is, we don't have a tiger anymore, right? We have the bills and the relationship problems and the on and on, the traffic, right? Whatever, right? Those are the things that most people are actually getting have that emotional responses to on an everyday basis. So they become chronic, right? So that little bit of stress that was in your body when you had that response with the tiger, which would be a healthy response then, if it's left for a chronic period of time, it starts to create more problems, right? So that's what can happen. And how it can create subluxations, what ends up happening is, again, body perceives the stress, creates those hormones act on the muscles start moving out of alignment, and guess what? Subluxation, right? And then we start the cycle again. Now, we're all exposed to those stresses every single day, all of these, right? Everyday basis, right? So what are the chances of you having a subluxation in the future?
Great.
100%.
Does this make sense?
Yeah.
This is where maintenance comes in, right? So we all know about dental hygiene, right? This would be spinal hygiene, right? So we eat sugar or whatever the heck we're going to eat. We brush our teeth and we go see the dentist, right? Same with chiropractic. Well, these things are going to be happening on an everyday basis. It would make sense for us to check if that's happening and then get rid of it at that point. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. So that's where I recommend maintenance type of care for a lot of people, because we're going to be exposed to these things. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to try to avoid those things, but if they do show up in our life, it's good to check, right? So when you come in and you don't have any subluxations, we celebrate, right? We say, good, you're doing good, right? And if you do have subluxation, or we want to get rid of that, right? Make sense? So these are the 5 things that we can start doing in place of those other things to make sure that our bodies are healthy and we live that long, healthy lifestyle that we want, right? 100-year lifestyle. So there's 5 factors. We'll go into them. Food, exercise, sleep, positive mental attitude, and a sound nervous system. Got all those things going on, guess what? 100 years? No problem. They're lined up like a circle because we're representing it like a tire, right? So if you have, let's call it the little let's make little spokes here. If one of these spokes is smaller than the other one, right? And you don't have, let's say, the proper food in your diet, everything else is perfect. You have what kind of wheel does that look like? It's a little wonky, right? And if you try to roll that thing down the hall of life, guess what? It's not going to go very far very well, right? A little wobbly. So we want to make sure that all these things are functioning as good as they possibly can to make sure that we live the longest, healthiest life possible. So let's talk about food. Why is food even important? So I always like to start with the why, right? Why is food important?
Energy your body uses.
Energy that your body uses. That is great. What are you built of? What is your body made of?
Cells.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of water.
And what are the building blocks of those cells?
Water.
Water, carbs, proteins, fats, right? Everything we consume,
Nutrients.
right? The stuff that we put into our body is what actually builds you. Like I said, trillions of cells every second going away. New ones are being built up. They're being built up by the food that we eat, right? So if we want to look at ourselves in 100 years from now, well, we could use a year, because literally your body actually will get rid of almost all those cells every 3 to 5 years. Something like that, right? So those pictures you have of you when you were a kid, you don't have any of those cells left. They're all gone. All those cells have been, they're gone. You're a new person, right? And you've created you out of all the things you've eaten from then to now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Right.
So we want to make sure we're looking at what kind of foods we're eating. Now I have a whole pamphlet I can give you guys about what to eat properly, right? But let's just go generalizations right now, right? Because that's a whole 5-hour talk that we can talk about, right? So 80% organic. Why I say 80%? Because, yeah, 100%. Maybe 100% is pretty hard nowadays. Why do I want to do the organic stuff, right? Real basic organic stuff, well, the non-organic stuff has this, right? It has not enough nutrients in the soil because they're grown on soil that doesn't have a complete amount of nutrients, right? So if your body requires, let's say, 50 minerals, those that are not grown organically only have 3 or 4 of those nutrients, right? So there you go. That's the first step, right? Now, if those nutrients aren't in that, let's say, corn, what'll end up happening is that it won't have its natural defenses, right? So if, like, let's say a weed comes around and wants to invade that space, let's say that corn won't have the ability to fight off that weed. So what ends up happening is the agricultural industry will spray it with pesticides, right? So now what do pesticides do? They destroy the insect's nervous system, reproductive systems, and digestive systems. Usually, like, they destroy those things, right? That's what they do to the small insects. Bioaccumulation over time in our bodies do what? The same thing, right? So we know that. We know that they destroy nervous system function, they destroy reproductive function. We know that the reproductive health of people in America especially is declining, right? We're getting less and less reproductive health in our body, right? So people are having more and more infertility issues. And this is one of the problems. There's a lot of problems with it, but this is one of the big ones. What else? They're sprayed with pesticides. And then so now that they're being sprayed with pesticides, some of those will wilt because they can't stand all the pesticides. So they have to do what? Genetically modify them, right? So they genetically modify those plants and those corns or whatever to be able to withstand all the onslaughts of pesticides that they spray on top of them. And the pesticides are not water soluble. So if you try to wash them off with water, they do not come off. Now here's the other thing. You could make a plant, and they actually do this, you can make a plant actually have pesticides inside of them, right? Yeah. You can make the plant a pesticide itself.
Oh my.
Scared.
Okay.
Yeah.
So really good for our bodies.
No.
Right? So we gotta put on our logical thinking hats here, right? Our critical thinking. If nature didn't make it like that, we're kind of playing God in that sense. Every time we've done that, we've kind of messed up. So, not to say that we shouldn't be scientific, but we've got to understand some of the repercussions that we have that it actually has in our body. Now, where are the long-term studies that show that organic is or that non-organic is safe for you? They don't have it, right? There's no long-term studies on this stuff. They have short-term studies with animals, and they've shown tumors and cancers and things like that, but not on humans, right? So, you be the experiment, which we all are, right? So food, we're gonna get the organic stuff, right? At least 80% of the time. We are, we're not gonna cook it like let's say we get like good healthy vegetables. We're not gonna like over steam them or things, or not over like fry them. We wanna lightly steam, things like that, right? Make sure, and then the last part I'll talk about food right now. Make sure you're drinking enough water, okay? So water, how much should you be drinking?
Gallon a day.
Gallon a day would be good, unless you're like a small kid.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So here, the easiest way to do this is take your weight, divide it in half, that's how many ounces. So weight in pounds, divide it in half, and that's how many ounces you should get, right? So if you weigh 100 pounds, 50 ounces, right? 200 pounds, 100 ounces. You have more cells, right? So you have to take it up, right?
So it's more
They might be fat cells, but
it's more than you think.
Huh?
You need more than you think.
yeah. So unless you really love water, like I'm always thirsty.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I'm talking water here, guys. I'm not talking sodas and teas
No,
or things
yeah,
like that, right? We're
yeah.
talking water. Yes, you can flavor them with things like, cucumbers and stuff like that, but water. Enough about food. Exercise. Why is that important?
Moving
Why is moving important?
to get rid of the toxins.
To get rid of toxins, we talked about it, right? The other part is when we get those nice nutrients in our bodies, when you exercise for about 20 minutes, so this is the recommendation, 20 minutes, at least, so I say 10 to 20 minutes, 3 to 6 times a week, right? So 10 to 20 minutes, 3 to 6 times a week, and it has to be something where you're kind of hard to talk to the person next to you. So if you're just sitting there slightly rolling around, hey, how you doing today? It counts as movement,
Okay.
but it doesn't count as exercise, right? So there's a difference there. So I think it's good to move, but you definitely need to do some form of activity, right? So you could use your mind and think of all kinds of fun things to do that can get your heart pumping, right?
Yes.
Cool. Exercise. Right? Exercise. Very important. So I'm dancing, having sex, all these things are very good for you as far as exercise goes, right? So that's why it's important. When you do that, your blood vessels will actually dilate, and the good healthy food that you've been eating are gonna get into your cells. That's important. Make sense? So that's why it's important to have the proper exercise every single day, right? Or 3 to 6 times a day, a week. Last one, the third one, sleep. Why is sleep important?
Stores your body.
Restores your body. So they say about 80%, that's the estimate of this, 80% of the healing that takes place in our body happens when we sleep. Mostly in that deep
REM.
sleep, the REM, so deep sleep, okay? So that's why sleep's important, because if we're trying to heal from an issue, any kind of issue, it doesn't matter what it is, subluxation or whatever, it's important that we get enough sleep, okay? So there's a recommendation for it. 6 to 8 hours a night. You've probably heard this before, right? So I have a whole bunch of, I did a whole sleep talk, and so you can look that up. I'm going to be posting that this week. So I did a whole sleep talk about all kinds of good little tips and tricks that you can use so that if you're having trouble sleeping, then you make sure you get it, okay? And chiropractic is a big part of that, okay? Positive mental attitude, why is that even important?
Endorphins.
Endorphins, yeah, beautiful, right? So there's actual physical things that happen inside of our bodies due to a positive mental attitude, right? So the example I give is, let's say there's 2 people and they're identical twins, okay? So their genetics are exactly the same. So we'll just leave that as not the factor here. One person loves roller coasters and one person hates them. The person that loves them, let's go with a hate person, right? Let's say they go on a roller coaster, what happens?
Awful time.
They have a terrible time.
I don't like those.
Their hormones, what are the hormones that they're producing? They're negative stress hormones, right? And so what ends up happening, let's say that mood is there for a long time, those stress hormones have an effect, right? So what do you think they're more likely or less likely to fight off cancer cells and bacteria?
Less likely.
Less likely, right? So they're more likely to get cancer, more likely to get sick all the time, right? That's what happens with the negative attitude. You've probably experienced in your life. People that are negative Nancys tend to have, nothing against anybody named Nancy, right? Sorry. So they end up getting sick more often. It's usually what happens, right? Versus somebody that's positive and upbeat, the hormones that's produced inside of their bodies are actually healthy ones, right? So you think of your body like this big pharmacy, right? And it's creating all these chemicals all the time. It's magical stuff happens inside these bodies, right? That we don't, even today, we don't fully understand all the stuff that happens inside of our bodies to create health, right? We still don't get it all, right? Because it's pretty complicated,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we're just kind of stuck still in this kind of Newtonian physics stuff. But there's this whole other realm called quantum physics. There's all of this other stuff that's going on that we still don't even fully understand, right? So really important that we're at least aware of these things, right? So we don't have to fully understand it to take advantage of it, right? Don't wait till we fully understand it to take advantage of it.
No.
So positive mental attitude is really important. How do you actually have a positive mental attitude, especially for somebody that's struggling with this, right? One of the simple ways is gratitude, right?
Thankful, yeah.
Super easy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? So real simple to do that. So I call it getting a practice of it. Just like if you're trying to build muscles. So, and how do you build a muscle?
Repetition.
Repetition through resistance, right? So this is where it's about, right? So if you're having let's say a crappy day, right? If you get really good at creating that positive attitude over time,
It's okay.
you'll get better at it, right? You'll get better at it and better and better at it, right? So those things that used to bother you, they won't bother you so much anymore. Make sense? So I'm not saying either of you guys have any of those issues, but does it make sense? So positive mental attitude, really, really important. Gratitude journaling, super important. Right before you go to bed at night, I challenge you. Write down something you're thankful for. One thing, 3 things. Doesn't have to be anything big, something small, right? And then you can do that in the morning or the night. I like journals because you're going to start to pile up these things over time. You can look back, I got a lot of stuff to be thankful for, right? Yeah. Write it on the mirror, right? Here's the other one. I really like this one. It's your physiology affects your mental state, right? So having good posture, right? Chiropractic can help with this, right?
Yeah.
Having good posture. What about smiling, right? Smiling, right?
Right.
They've done studies on this. People that were literally, I think they did a study on, I forgot the university, but they had these people that were clinically depressed, right? So they have the diagnosis of clinical depression, right? So all they had them do, they didn't give them any drugs. They've done studies with exercise, that helps it. But with this study, all they did was they had themselves look in the mirror and smile, cheek to cheek, until they had crow's feet, right? And guess what ended up happening?
They got healed.
About 98% of them were no longer clinically depressed.
That's awesome.
How hard is that? Smile! Look at yourself and smile. You have to start with love for yourself, right? And you've heard this, right? You can't love somebody else until you love yourself. Heard this one? It's true. You gotta love yourself first, then you can give the love out. So that's the non-selfish reason for doing it. But do it for yourself. All right. Sound nervous system. Sound nervous system. Why is this important, right? We talked about this, right? If you don't have that nervous system functioning, are you going to be able to digest your food properly, right? Let's say there's subluxation to your stomach, right? And your digestive system's not going to function as good as it possibly can. Exercise. You're all tweaked out of alignment, trying to go run, probably not going to work that well, right? Sleep. Just one example of this. I had somebody that couldn't, barely sleep, insomnia, right? They were getting 6 to 8 hours a week, okay? Started getting adjusted, balancing out the nervous system, the fight or flight versus the rest and digest, and actually things were starting to balance out. He's up to 40 plus hours a week now. So, and this is just with chiropractic, one spoke in the wheel, right? Can affect the whole, thank you. Can affect everything, right? It's real important, okay? So, and how do you know if your nervous system is working properly? Go see a chiropractor, right? Hopefully somebody that's focuses on spinal reconstruction wellness model, right? That's what I recommend. Look at your pamphlets. There are some things in here. If you want to look at the second page, that You know, it's just real simple things. I'm not going to read all these things, okay? But things like avoid heavy lifting, don't bend, twist, and turn, right? Some of these simple things that we're looking at. Women should wear low heels, okay? So yes, this is actually true, right? If you're up here like this all day long, it's going to put some pressure on your lower back. It just does, okay? But I'm not saying you can't wear it. I'm saying maybe don't wear it all the time. And if you're going to wear it, make sure somebody gives you a nice massage when you get home, okay? That's a good idea, right?
In the car.
Yes, right? So again, these are some simple things. I'm not going to go over them. Make sure your posture's good. We went over some of the other things earlier. This is what most people used to go to the dentist because we talked about, why did most people go to the dentist back in the day? They had toothache, right? Pain in their tooth. What ended up happening was they would go to the dentist and they would say, oh, you got, cavity in your tooth, right? Normal, part of aging. Let's yank that bad boy out of there.
When's a good time to go to the dentist?
Before you get tooth. Thank you. I'll be here on that. So that's what ended up happening. They would just yank this thing. They would say, oh, it's a normal part of aging. That's just what ends up happening. That's what they used to say.
Yeah.
We know we can laugh at that now, right? That doesn't happen. We know that if you take care of your teeth, you brush your teeth, floss, go to the dentist regularly, how long could your teeth last you?
Forever.
Forever. They're still, watch them. Okay, so same with your spine, right? You used to think that your spine, and this is still a perception that a lot of people have nowadays even, right? So they think, oh, how long does your spine last? Well, they just tend to break down over time. That's just what they do. Now I'll get people that come in with massive degeneration, stage 4, okay? Stage 4 in one part of their neck. And let's say that they're 70, okay, for example. Massive degeneration here, perfect looking spine here. Okay? How old is this one and how old is this one?
Different ages.
No, they're the same age,
Yeah.
right? So they're the same age, right? You have what about degeneration in one knee versus the other one?
They've been around the same amount of time.
Same exact age, both sides. So is it age that creates the problem? No, because if it was age that created the
The
problem,
whole thing would be bad.
everything would be degenerated, right? So it doesn't make sense. That logic is flawed. But the time does play a factor, right? So if you have a problem in an area and you left it there for a long, long, long time, yes, that will start to get worse and worse over time. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Same with your cavity in your tooth. If your cavity is there for a small period of time, it won't be that bad. You leave it there for a long time, guess what?
Root
Then you got root canal. Then you got some
Yeah.
problems, right?
Yeah.
So this is the concept, right? Now we know that as long as we look out for our spine, we look at it, we make sure we check it regularly, right? And that's going to depend upon the person, the activity levels, and things like that. We check it regularly, make sure that the spine's working properly. If you're holding your adjustments for a while, then you're good, right? So it's important that we keep up with our spine. Don't wait till it's degenerated, right? Does that make sense?
Right.
Cool. Now, I actually enjoy what I do. I don't know if you guys
Hard to
have
tell.
figured that. I do. I actually love it. And the reason is because I get to touch people's lives, right? I get to explain to people that their bodies are amazing. That's pretty cool. I think that's a cool job. And I get to help people get healthy, right? And so this is just one of the examples right here. So this is Jason over here. Hi. So he was having headaches, right? So headaches for pretty much 10 years, right? Daily. Headaches, lower back pain. So I don't know if you guys have experienced headaches before. They're not fun. I've had a couple headaches in my life, but they're not fun. They don't feel good, right? And just imagine getting that every single day. It's 10 years, right? Comes in, we look for, God bless you, we look for this thing called subluxation. We didn't think, oh, maybe he has a lack of Tylenol in his body. You see the logic there, right? That doesn't make sense. So I'm not going to bag on medications right now. But because they do save people's lives. They absolutely do. They save people's lives all the time, okay? But when they're used improperly or overly abused, let's say for years and years and years, or they're trying to treat something, it's kind of just masking the symptoms, right? You're never fully getting to the problem, right? So us as chiropractors, what we're really responsible for is figuring out what the root cause is, right? Get to the root cause, fix it, and then you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to try to mask it anymore. It's better. Does that make sense? So we found subluxations in his spine that was creating the headaches, right? 60 to 70% of headaches are actually coming from neck problems, right? A physical problem, a physical stress. So we got in there, started moving that bone into alignment, and took the pressure off the nervous system, allowing him to, ta-da, get rid of his headaches. Gone, right? Month of chiropractic, no more headaches, right? So now what we do? Just check his spine regularly, right? I don't see him anymore, but this is, it's important, right? So, knee pain, right? So, okay, here's what I want you guys to do. And I'll do this after. Knee pain. So this is Dwayne, right? So 20 years dealing with knee problems. So every day we take about 10,000 steps or something like that, right? So 10,000 reminders every single day that you got a problem. Okay. Now, imagine waking up in the morning. As soon as you get up, you're hurting, and every step you take after that hurts. That's a tough life to live, right? So we looked at his knees. This is the fun story. His tibias were actually rotated internally. Okay. So they were, and it wasn't like they were what's called a dislocation, right? So it's not a dislocation; it's a subluxation, less than a dislocation, right? That's one of the examples of the term, right? The other term for this is less light. Lux means light. Sub, less than, not enough light coming through. That's the nervous system part of it. So that's kind of fun.
Okay.
Now, subluxation in his knees. What do? I actually adjust extremities. I adjust knees because I think that I should look at the whole body, right? That's how I take care of the body. I look at the whole thing, from head to toe, right? So we realign the tibias, put them back into alignment. And guess what?
No
problems. Gone. Completely gone, right? Now, how many people you know that have one of these issues, right? So this is the example I give. Let's say that you knew somebody, right? And they had, the example, let's say that they had that cut they were talking about earlier. And they put a Band-Aid on it, right? And 3 years later, it still hasn't healed.
That's not good.
That's a problem. That's called a problem, right? So what ends up happening is, okay, so they say, hold on, wait, no, it's okay. I'll just get a jumbo Costco size of Band-Aids that'll last me a long time. It's fine. It'll be okay. Is that good logic, right? At one point, we have to start thinking, right? We have to say, what's not working here? Something's not functioning properly. We need to address it, right? Logical, right? So that's what we do as chiropractors. We got to say, well, maybe it's the nerve function that's going to that arm that's not allowing it to happen. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's what we do here, okay? And we got more examples of this. Achilles tendinitis. This is just one more I want to just go over with you. This is Mary right here. She's one of my earlier success stories. she came in. She was having terrible lower back pain, right? All her life. She was like 16, 17 years old. What ended up happening was she was a runner, and one day her back went out on her. When I say out, I mean flat. She's on the bed, laid up for like a week or two at a time, okay? That's hard. So she went through her life where she had bouts of this every I think it was like 3 to 6 months, something like that. It would end up happening for her. She had seen the ringer, right? So she went through the medical doctors. They were prescribing her medications. They only do so much, right? Did they ever fix a problem that we take care of here? No. Physical therapy she went through. She went through